the conditions under which the sample has been captured, so there's no reliable way of accurately dating a blood stain.
As it relates to the knife that you have in front of you, and I think that's exhibit 3. Can you tell us the age of the stains that you found, either on the blade itself or under the handle?
No, there's no way of determining how long they have been there.
There are other things on that blade besides blood stains, is that correct?
Well, there may be other things on here. There may be a little bit of rust, and there may be other things too that were not determined. Certainly under the handle, there was a variety of substances. I did not make any attempt to identify them.
Did you find any vegetable matter? I'm curious to know if that you found any green plant-like material or corn, anything like that.
There did not appear to be anything that was fresh or recognizable in terms of green, basically debris.
Incidentally, the blood stain that you had determined was present on the blade, was that a long streak type stain, or is it a spot? What can you tell us, these folks of that?
It may have covered an inch or a little bit more, a very thin film. It was not a continuous, full covered area. Some of it is still visible.
May I go with you? One question before I do that. You've indicated this little area right here.
From about here up to about here.
Right about here. Okay. Here, you from that back along that knife was taken.
I don't know. I
Can't tell me that that happened.
no.
How did you, in fact, determine that that little stain on there is what you do? That,
The exact tests I did were 2 color tests, one involving a change in color with phenolphthalein, the other one was a benzene test.
you put liquid on the blade itself.
I usually take a cotton swab, add a very small drop of water to the swab, simply rub in the smallest area as possible, and see if I get a color indicating transfer of the stain to the swab. We then take and add phenolphthalein and hydrogen peroxide, and a pink color indicates the presence of blood. The benzidine test, we do add benzidine to the stain and again hydrogen peroxide, and you get a bluish green color.
You add liquid to the blade itself, at least to a cotton swab.
So a cotton swab, or sometimes a spread, something to transfer the stain to a substance. The reason we do that is if you add the liquid directly to the knife, you will be diluting the stain and perhaps destroying it for any further analysis.
Is it conceivable that it's possible that in fact you can spread the stain using the cotton on the surface you tested for?
You could probably spread it, you'd be diluting it out.
Then underneath the handle, you also found some rust, debris, and stain
irradiates the area very close to the first ribbon, upward on both the blade and on the handle. The stain on the blade itself gave a screening test for blood, but did not give a positive species. The stain on the handle, which appeared to be almost adjacent, as though portion of the stain they matched, and that one gave a species that was human.
So the best you can tell us then, Mrs. Sauer, is that as it relates to the blade itself, you cannot tell us that that was the blood of Ruth Patterson.
No,
You cannot tell us that in fact it was even human blood.
no, cannot.
But as it relates to the handle, underneath the handle, you can tell us that that was human blood.
Human blood, correct.
But you cannot tell us that that was the blood of Ruth Patterson.
No, I cannot distinguish that blood through any identifying.
But in fact, you did have Ruth Patterson's blood,
Yes,
and you had typed that.
yes, I did.
And you had done enzymes, enzymatic studies as well.
Did 2 enzymes, yes.
And did you do any genetic marking for that?
Well, the 2 enzymes would be considered a part of the genetic marking.
I take it you did not do any tests, any serology work at all on the threshold, that is on the stains that were present on the threshold, the work room, the work door of the Ruth Patterson home.
No, I did not.
In fact, no one did anything like that as it relates to that threshold, did they?
No one did anything with the question.
Did you or did anybody do any testing with respect to any of the blood splatters indicated here in the testimony were present on the north wall of the north sales room? Ruth Patterson?
No, no, the only stains we collected were off of the runners.
Incidentally, did Ruth, did you find her glasses, or eyeglasses?
Her glasses were underneath a table along the west wall.
Have they been broken?
I do not recall that they were broken.
In her bedroom, the bed was turned down?
Yes,
There was a pillow on the bed? I mean at the foot.
there was a small pillow near the foot of the bed.
In looking for palm or fingerprints, did you determine whether or not there was any blood on any print that was found on the north door of the north sales room?
I do not believe there was any blood at all that I can remember, sir, on the area of the door that Mr. Chapman left his print.
Now, as it relates to this knife that again, you've indicated that there was pink fiber.
And so the 2 pink fibers.
And you've indicated to us scientifically there isn't anything significant at all about that. That there,
Cotton fibers are the most common fibers that we have. They're not real significant as, do not have the variety of, say, carpet fibers or of other fibers. The color itself was pale in nature. Did not allow me to do any color comparisons chemically by any dye extraction. They were, I would say, common fibers.
the fact is, you cannot tell us that the fibers that were found on the knife, the pink cotton fibers, came from the terry cloth wraparound.
No, I can say that the terry cloth wraparound could have been a possible source of the plasma.
Anything that is cotton and pink could be a possible source.
But were similar color.
That happened.
Yes.
And that's why I think you told Miller, there isn't anything scientifically significant about having found pink fiber cotton on the knife.
Nothing real significant, but in fact, because they are common fibers.
Just a couple more questions. I take it you did not make a judgment that the that knife made the impressions on the pink terry cloth wrap around the skirt. That's true too.
I did not make a judgment that it did make it. I did not eliminate it.
You didn't rule it out, and you didn't rule it in. That about the best of it?
Yes, I felt it's something that someone can look at and make their own judgment.
The fact of the matter is, you did measure the impression on the skirt, and found it to be 1 inch to 1.5 inches. That's right.
Yes, at various points along it varies.
And you measured the knife,
Yes, I did.
and that 1 inch to 1.5 inches is wider than the knife and is wide as the point. Is that true?
And the knife is an inch and 16 that is wide.
Yeah, we were told it was 7/8. 7/8 of an inch.
No, I don't, I think up here it's wider than that, this particular portion.
Can you tell us that the knife itself, which you got right there, is the knife that made the impression on the skirt?
I cannot tell you that.
You also observed the tire tracks of the west side of Booth's home
Yes,
in the grass.
in the grass.
And you also observed tire tracks out at the place where the safe was found.
Yes, we did.
And you didn't attempt to match up the tire impressions that were in Ruth's yard and the tire impressions out at the safe scene with the tires of Lewis and Anderson automobile.
That clearly is not my area of expertise.
Sorry. They're all of us. Down the sheet. I think they're exhibits 34 and 8. I think that's it. As it relates to either the left or the right shoe. The truth is, you cannot tell this jury that blood on the shoe or human or dog, cat, squirrel, raccoon, anything.
That's correct, all I can say is that it's blood.
Says blood.
Blood.
And we are talking about the bottom, that is the sole, and the heel.
That's part of it.
All right.
Part of the ball.
Did you look for blood on the top of the shoe?
I looked for blood on the top of the shoe along the rubber portion along the side and on the shoelaces.
And it was the mark of the report there. Would you demonstrate for the jury where you looked for blood?
I looked all over the surface of the shoes for any obvious stains that appeared to be blood. I did not visually see anything that appeared to be blood.
I noticed that it has strings.
Yes,
Did you look for blood splatters, anything of that nature on the strings as well?
yes.
And did you find any?
No, there are some darker stains where it has been in the eyes. It's not blood.
You didn't find any blood then, of any person's human blood or otherwise on the top.
Yeah, the only blood that I found was on the sole.
One last thing, it's obvious to me, and the answer is obvious to me as well, but I've asked you before. These appear to have been recently washed. When did you take possession of? When did you get? Excuse me. When did the lab receive?
May I check my notes?
Yes, please.
August 28th, the shoes were brought into the laboratory by Deputy Jack.
And they've been in your possession or in the lab.
Yes. They were returned, I believe. I don't know when the others were returned to Cal.
This is our, the fibers that you found on 1953. Do they have come from blue cotton,
No,
green cotton,
no,
red cotton?
no,
Do they have come from pink wool,
no.
pink polyester? Or from pink cotton? Rubber. Mrs. Sauer, would you ask Robert Harvey? They called Robert Harvey. Harvey, will you step forward and be sworn, please?
Raise your hand, please. Solemnly swear or affirm the evidence which you're now about to expound will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do.
Robert Harvey,
That's correct.
your occupation and place of employment, sir?
I'm a criminal explorer with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation.
You say criminal for. What's criminal for?
Well, it's a supervisory position within the DCI Criminal Justice Laboratory. I supervise several sections of that lab.
How long have you been employed in the laboratory of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation?
Slightly over 13 years.
Please review for us your education, training, and experience.
Well, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Biology and Chemistry, both from Washington University, which is located in Topeka, Kansas. I worked for 2.5 years as a chemist for the Kansas State Department of Health. I was employed for 7 years as a special agent for the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, where I was assigned primarily to the laboratory based on my previous experience in college. And at the time I left, I was in charge of that particular laboratory. I've been employed by the DCI, Iowa DCI, for about 13.5 years. During that time, I've had occasion to attend the FBI Academy on several different occasions for specialized training in areas of laboratory management, firearms identification, blood stain identification, gunshot residue were very specialized schools. I've also attended the McCrone Research Institute, which is located in Chicago, in areas of microscopy. I'm a fellow in the American Academy of Forensic Sciences and a charter member of the Association of Firearms and Tool Mark Examiners.
Are you a firearm and tool mark examiner?
Yes.
What is firearms identification or firearms examination?
firearms identification is primarily the scientific examination of various components of ammunition found at the scene of the crime or recovered from bodies of victims, in particular fired cartridge cases, fired shotgun shells, fired bullets, shotgun pellets, that sort of thing. Being able to look at those items and describe the type of weapon that would have fired them, such as caliber, gauge, make, or model, and then when a suspect weapon is developed, to be able to compare those items with a weapon that is suspect and either identify or eliminate the weapon as having fired those items.
What makes such identification possible?
There's two types of characteristics that one looks at. One is what we call class characteristics, and that would be, for instance, the caliber or the size of the firearm that fired the projectile. Another is rifling characteristics, and a firearm that fires a single projectile, such as a bullet, the barrel is rifled, and rifling is a high and low spiraling configuration in the bore of the barrel that produces a spinning motion on the bullet, which allows it to travel flat rather than yawing and tumbling. If the bullet did not have the spin, it would very quickly tumble. That's why when you see a football thrown, it does have spin on it in order to travel more accurately. Each manufacturer develops his own configuration of rifling, that being the numbers of lands and grooves. It could be anything from 3 or 4 to as many as 16 lands and grooves in a barrel. They may spiral the bullet to the right or to the left. Some have wide lands and narrow grooves, and others have just the opposite. So by looking at the impressions on the surface of the bullets, one can pretty well determine the caliber and the make of the gun that a particular bullet was fired from. Those are called class characteristics. When the class characteristics are determined then to be the same in a suspect weapon and a questioned bullet from the scene or from a body, then one begins to look at microscopic characteristics. And these are called striations that are left by the barrel on the bullet and are individual, just like fingerprints on a person are individualistic. Each gun produces individual characteristics, marks on the bullets that it fires or the cartridge cases that it fires. Then it's simply a microscopic comparison using what is called a comparison microscope, which is in essence 2 microscopes incorporated into one set of eyepieces, where the examiner can look at the bullet from the victim or the scene and compare it with a test-fired bullet from a suspect weapon, looking for those individual characteristics, the striations. When you arrive at the point where you can go completely around the bullet and see the same corresponding marks on each land and groove, then the examiner can form an opinion and identify the bullet. If there is no comparison between the bullets, then the examiner would eliminate that gun as having fired the bullet. And oftentimes the bullets are damaged to such an extent that there's just not enough area to really form an opinion. At that point you have to say that even though there were some individual characteristics present, there just wasn't enough to form an opinion as to whether or not that particular gun had fired that bullet.
In your section of the crime laboratory, Mr. Harvey, do you keep a collection of weapons?
Yes, we have a very extensive collection of handguns, rifles, and shotguns, probably numbering somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000 guns, I would guess.
And do you make an effort to keep yourself familiar with weapons and their various parts?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Harvey, I hand you what is marked States Exhibit 11. I'll ask you to take a look at that and tell us if you recognize it.
Yes, sir, I did.
What is that?
States Exhibit 11 is a spring with two metal plungers attached to each end of the spring. And this particular item was presented to me by Dennis Chapman of our laboratory. And his question was, what is it?
He presented that to you when?
I believe it was about the day after they had returned from the investigation of this particular incident.
He came to you and asked, what is it?
Yes.
What did you do?
I examined it and I said, well, it looks like a slide stop plunger and safety plunger and spring from a auto-loading pistol.
And did you go any further and have it identified for him?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
The next thing I did was to go to our collection, which consists of a lot of different makes, models, and calibers of guns. And from that, I took several automatic pistols, which I felt may have been the source of this type of spring and plunger assembly. The first gun that I took apart was the Colt 45 auto-loading pistol, and discovered very quickly that this was in fact not consistent with that plunger and plunger spring. The next gun that I took apart was a Llama 45 caliber auto-loading pistol, and discovered that the spring and plunger assembly from the Llama was identical to the one that had been presented to me by Mr. Chapman.
Did you then relay that information to the investigators?
Yes, I did.
Did you later receive, for examination, further evidence in connection with the homicide of Ruth Patterson?
Yes.
Sometime after you told investigators to look for a 45 caliber Llama?
Yes.
I handed you State's Exhibit 17. Please examine that, and in doing so, be careful to assure us that it's in safe condition.
The weapon is empty.
The weapon is empty and safe.
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you recognize that weapon?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
Well, by the serial number of the gun, which is B2163-9, which is the same serial number that I reflect in my report as to an examination I did on this particular weapon. It is a Llama 45 caliber auto-loading pistol.
When did you receive that?
That particular item was received in the laboratory on August the 28th, 1987, at 11:48 a.m. It was received from Sergeant Jack Stewart of the Washington County Sheriff's Department.
What did you do with it?
Well, after receiving the gun from Officer Stewart, the first thing I did was to examine the gun to see if, in fact, the plunger spring and the slide stop plunger and the safety plunger were, in fact, in the gun.
And what did you find?
I found that, in fact, they were not in the gun.
They were missing.
Yes.
What did you do then?
Well, the next thing I did then was to take State's Exhibit 11, the plunger spring and plunger assembly that Mr. Chapman had found at the scene, and then did insert it into the gun and did ascertain that, in fact, that assembly would fit in the plunger sleeve on this gun, and the gun would, in fact, function properly with it in place.
And did you so?
Yes, it did.
By functioning properly, you testified?
I then did test fire the gun, yes.
I won't be asking you to do that.
Mr. Don't find it for me.
But short of that, Mr. Harvey, would you report weapon, Exhibit 17.
Should I go over the jury?
Exhibit 2.
This is the plunger assembly, two metallic plungers on both ends of the spring. And on the side of the gun is a slide stop safety, and what that does is lock the slide open when the last round of ammunition is fired. And behind there is a thumb-operated safety selector, which when it's in a safe position will lock the gun up so that it will not fire. The purpose of the plunger assembly is to slide into this sleeve or this tube, which is right above the grip. And it does so. Shooting us across the room. Back in the courtroom. Well, what that's supposed to do is, and it does, is to slide down in there. There's an indent on the end of this, and there's an indent on the end of this. And the trick is to get that down in there. I did it yesterday. Get this down on the What that does is to simply give resistance to this safety and this slide stop punch.
I'm sorry. Robert, I didn't hear your last answer. Gives resistance.
To the thumb safety and the slide stop.
And for the record, that the spring plunger is now in place in the exhibits of the 17th weapon.
Yes, it is.
I'll ask you to remove it from the
Want to remove now?
Can the weapon be fired without the spring?
Yes, it can.
How does the weapon operate?
Well, the weapon is what they call an auto-loading pistol or a semi-automatic pistol. The ammunition is loaded into the magazine, let's say stacked magazine, where each round of ammunition lays on top of the preceding round. When the clip is loaded, then it is inserted into the grip of the gun. Then very simply, the gun is cocked. In this particular instance, since the
clip is empty, it will lock open. And one round is selected off the top of the clip and fed into the chamber of the gun. When this comes back, it also will cock the hammer of the gun, put it into a firing position. On this particular type of gun, there are two different safeties. One is the thumb selector safety back here, which has to be in a firing position, and also the grip safety. In other words, the gun has to be gripped, and that grip safety has to be squeezed in before the gun will fire. And then when it is squeezed in and the trigger is pulled, then the hammer drops, discharging the cartridge that's in the chamber. The recoil from that cartridge will then force the slide back, will recock the gun, will extract and eject the fired cartridge case, will then select another round off the top of the clip and load it back into the chamber, and it is being ready then to fire.
The cartridge casing itself is ejected.
Yes.
Does that weapon be carried in a cocked and locked?
Yes.
What was the condition of that weapon when you received it?
Well, the condition of the weapon was, the first thing I noticed was the fact that the spring, slide plunger spring, was missing. The next thing I noticed was the fact that the gun, to me, appeared to be nearly new, in excellent condition as far as the finish and general appearance of the gun. The next thing that I noticed was the fact that the gun was extremely oily, both inside and out, and to me appeared that had probably been fairly recently cleaned and oiled.
Did you conduct any tests with the weapon?
Yes, I did.
Tell us what you did.
The test that I conducted with the weapon was to test fire the firearm in the laboratory where I was attempting to recover bullets that had been fired from the barrel of this gun, and also the fired cartridge cases for future comparisons. Also at that time I did examine the gun closely and determined that it was in fact in good operating condition and did operate as the manufacturer had designed it to operate.
Mr. Harvey, I hand you what are state's exhibits 15, 28, 16, 14, 12, and 24. And ask you if you can please identify those for us.
Yes, I can identify those items.
Go ahead, tell us what they are.
State's Exhibit 28 is a piece of aluminum that is painted blue with a white reflective stripe on it. This was recovered by Dennis Chapman at the time he did the crime scene investigation and was given to me for analysis. Do you want me to tell what my examination was this time? Or?
Why don't we go ahead and get that out of the way on that one?
Okay.
What did you do with that?
What I did
did was to simply look at it macroscopically without the aid of a microscope. And it was my opinion that State's Exhibit 28 is a piece of a 1986 Iowa license tag, and that it had been, or appeared to have been, struck by a rather large caliber bullet from the backside.
And you say it's 27. Have you seen that before?
Yes.
Can you tell us what, if anything, you did?
State's Exhibit 27 are license tags that were found at the residence of the victim and were brought in by the crime scene team, and that I did compare State's Exhibit 28 to.
And what kind of findings?
It was my opinion that State's Exhibit 28 did originate from the this particular license plate, and was at one time a portion of this corner of this license plate.
I want to get back to the firearms identification work that you did. Would you please explain to the jury what you did in connection with those other exhibits in front of you? And please refer to them by exhibit number.
Okay. State's Exhibit 15 is a fired 45 caliber Winchester Western cartridge case. This particular case is designed for use in an auto-loading 45 caliber gun. What I did was to compare the firing pin and breech face markings on the base of the case with test-fired cartridge cases that I produced in the laboratory by test firing the Llama. State's Exhibit 17, using the comparison microscope, and from that I was able to determine that State's Exhibit 15 had in fact been fired in State's Exhibit 17, the Llama 45 caliber auto-loading pistol.
And will exhibit 15 identified to you as being from a particular source?
Yes, there is a inscription on the box that contains State's Exhibit 15. It reads Winchester Western 45 auto empty case. I believe it says Hidden Valley Dirt Road. Looks like it says also 15:30 hours, 31 August.
Go ahead and in relation to the other exhibits, explain to the jury what you did.
State's Exhibit 16 is another fired Winchester Western 45 caliber auto-loading cartridge case. The same examination was conducted on this particular exhibit as the one in State's Exhibit 15, where using the comparison microscope, State's Exhibit 16 was compared with test-fired cartridge cases fired in State's Exhibit 17, where the microscopic markings present in the firing pin impression and on the primer, which reflect the breech face markings, were compared with one another. And based on this comparison, I was then able to determine that State's Exhibit 16 had been fired in the Llama State's Exhibit 17.
Go on, the next exhibit.
State's Exhibit 14 is a lead bullet core that I recovered from a piece of fiberboard that was brought into the laboratory that had been identified to me as having been removed from the Patterson residence. what Station Exhibit 14 is the lead core, which is covered by a metal jacket. And what happens a lot of times is that the metal jacket will be torn away from the core, and you'll simply end up with this piece of lead that really doesn't have any class or individual characteristics on it. Those marks would all be present on the jacket, since that would be the outermost portion of the bullet. So essentially all I was able to do on this Station Exhibit 14 was to identify it as being a lead core from a 45 caliber bullet, and it's consistent with Winchester Western silver tip ammunition. Station Exhibit 12 is a metal jacket, an aluminum jacket that is consistent with Winchester Western silver tip hollow point ammunition. This particular jacket was recovered from a coffee can full of oats that was identified to me as having come from the Patterson residence. This piece of jacket material does in fact contain individual and class characteristics that are comparable to the test bullets that were fired from the Long 45 caliber loading pistol, Station Exhibit 17. And based on a comparison, using the comparison microscope between this and the test fire bullets, I was able to arrive at the opinion that Station Exhibit 12 was a metal jacket that had at one time been a part of a 45 caliber bullet that had been fired from Station Exhibit 17 along the 45 caliber all-loading pistol.
The Rhode State offers in evidence Station Exhibits 12, 14, 15, and 16.
One of your discussed exhibits, no, there's not. Those are.
Remaining items is what?
Station Exhibit 24 is a box that contains the test fire bullets and cartridge cases that resulted from my test firing Station Exhibit 17 in the laboratory.
And they were used by you to examine under a comparison microscope.
Yes, these test fire cartridge cases and bullets were the items that I used when I compared the items found at the scene, the bullets, the jacket material, the cartridge cases that were involved in this case.
Would they be of any real significance in understanding what you did in connection with this case?
Station Exhibit 24? Well, they're simply those items that I did, in fact, physically use to identify Station Exhibit 15, 16, and 12.
Your Honor, for that purpose alone, for what purpose they brought this to is relevant. Another doctor, special significance. Just so I understand, is it a professional opinion based upon your experience, training, education, that the two cartridge casings that you examined were ejected from the Llama firearm Station Exhibit 17?
That is correct, yes.
And that the jacket, that ammunition found in the can of oats at the crime scene was also fired from the weapon Station Exhibit 17?
That's correct.
When you test fired the weapon, did the casing be ejected?
Yes, they did.
I have no further questions.
Harvey, with respect to the wall board, the bullet that was found in the wall board, I think it's just the bullet core. I think that's exhibit 14.
That's correct.
Did you take it and remove it from the wall board itself?
Yes, I did.
And with respect to that, where was it on the wall board itself? I mean, if you put the board up against the wall, maybe from the floor, how high up was it?
Well, I'm not sure because when I got I got a section of the wall. I didn't actually physically remove it from the wall. I got a section of the wall that contained State's Exhibit 14, which was delivered to the laboratory. So I didn't actually see it in place at the Patterson residence.
You never were at Patterson.
That's correct.
So if I understand correctly, you had a cartridge case from Hidden Valley,
Yes, sir.
and you had the Exhibit 16. Where did that come from?
Well, I'm not real certain. The writing on here has become somewhat smeared through handling. I can tell you the way it was described to me.
Well, do you have a date on it when it was delivered to you?
Yes, just a moment here. I did write on the cartridge case, so I can identify it. It's item BU in my report, and the only description that I have is that it was discovered at the Patterson residence.
What's the date?
Again, I'm not sure exactly. Well, there is appears to be a date in here of 30 September.
All right. That would be September 30. And you found a linen jacket, Exhibit 12. Did you match that up with Exhibit 14? Exhibit 14 being the lead bullet core, the fiber core. Did you match up the linen jacket and the coffee can with that thing?
No, I could not identify the jacket, item 12, Exhibit 12, as actually having been a part of State's Exhibit 14, the lead core. However, I strongly suspect that's the case.
Now, the fact of the matter is you didn't have any ammunition submitted to you that had belonged to Gene Anderson or anybody else.
No, there was no ammunition submitted to me.
In fact, what you did is you testified using your own ammunition you had in the lab.
That's correct.
The llama itself can be fired without that plunger that we had so much trouble with here today.
Yes, that's correct.
It's not necessary for that to be in place in order for that weapon to be fired.
No, the only problem is when that's not in place, it could lock up the gun to the point where it would not fire.
And did you, in fact, test fire without the plunger in place?
I believe I had the plunger assembly in place when I did test fire the gun.
Try to fire without it in place.
Yes, I did.
And it fired.
Yes, it will fire.
Incidentally, on the gun, you did find some fibers. Is that correct?
On the gun, I did find a hair.
And you removed them and put them in another container and marked them as such.
Yes, I did.
Sent them to the solid.
That's correct.
Recollect where those fibers were found on the gun. The grips.
The exact location on the gun, I don't recall exactly where that hair was found. It was on the exterior surface of the weapon, however.
There were no dents, no cracks, no abrasions, no scratches or anything of that nature on the gun.
No, sir.
The ammunition was very common, is that true?
Yes, Winchester or Western Silvertip 45 caliber ammunition is very common and available today.
I suspect the next witness would not be 10 minutes or less. So I think you will, Your Honor. I think you're very brief. You're a school teacher, and I'd like to get back to school. So Scott, I think only 5 10 minutes. You're very common. Very well.
Gary Collins, running, please.
Background, next witness is going to vote. Stand with her.
Mr. Collins, if you'll walk toward the judge and raise your right hand, please.
Stop just for oral purpose, gentlemen. Will you state your name, please?
Gary Collins,
Where do you live?
905 Paradise Drive.
What is your occupation? What is your occupation?
I am a teacher at high school.
How long have you been so employed?
I think this is my 19th year here.
Do you know the defendant in this case?
Yes, I do.
Do you see him in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Would you point him out, please?
Gene is in the left end of the council seat.
How long have you known the defendant?
I think I first became acquainted with Eugene when he was a sophomore in high school.
How did you meet him?
Just generally, the school our size, you know, most of the students.
Did you have an opportunity to get to know him better in connection to something outside of school capacity?
Yes, 2 years, I think the first year was 84, I supervised a task on crew and drove bus for Northern King, and Eugene was on the crew.
Do you recall having a conversation with the defendant sometime during the spring of 1987, during which the defendant asked you to work with him on the matter?
Yes, I did.
Would you explain?
Eugene had called and wanted to know if I would drive with us and supervise a task on crew for heating Cleveland Walmart at that point. And he had a number of acres contracted, and several people he thought would be lined up, and so I said, sure.
What kind of work are we talking about?
Supervising and the task on crew and driving with us.
And explain the pay situation as you observed. How much money the defendant paid his crew per hour compared to how much he was given by Pioneer Company to pay his crew?
Actually, not relevant
By
any stretch of the imagination.
If I may proceed, Your Honor. I believe the court will see obviously the relevant.
What are your questions then?
Can you explain the pay situation as you observed it? How much money the defendant paid his crew per hour as compared to how much he was given by Pioneer Company to pay his crew?
Overruled. I'm not exactly sure how much money was contracted per acre, but the task leads were to receive $3.40 an hour, and essentially I would be getting $5 an hour.
How much would be provided from Pioneer Company or paid directly to the employee then from the company?
I think
supervisor for the great crew that was paid you, aren't
Totally, yeah.
Okay, Pioneer was, at this time, paying, like I said, $3.40 per hour. I was receiving $5. I think essentially the situation was that Eugene would be required to pay at least 70% of the contract fees to the crew, and then he could, from the additional 30%, give bonuses if he so chose.
Well, in fact, did he hire these people that worked under your supervision with bonus promises?
Yes, he would pay them, I think, $3.65 per hour.
And that would come out of his 30%?
Yes, the 25% per hour would come out of his 30%.
How long did you work as a bus driver and supervisor for the Venice Captain crew?
I think altogether it was about 3.5 weeks.
When would have been the last time that you would have worked with the lieutenant?
The day that returned the bus to Hedrick would have been the last part of July.
Were you paid at the conclusion of your work relationship with the lieutenant?
Pioneer sent checks out directly. The additional fee I was to get for the extra hours, the bus maintenance, the travel time back from the field and so on, I was to receive strictly from Eugene, and I was not paid immediately.
Did you have a phone conversation with the defendant sometime after you returned the bus to Pioneer about when you'd be paid?
Yes, I did.
And at that time, in that phone conversation, did the defendant make a statement to you about other people who had not been paid?
Yes, he had indicated that other members of the crew had not been paid, and I suppose was wondering why they had not been paid directly, or indicated that he would be paid directly.
Do you recall talking by phone again with the defendant around August 15th or 18th, 1987 about getting paid?
Yes.
Describe that conversation, please.
I called Eugene, set up a date. I had thought it had gone on long enough, and the funds should have been released by Pioneer. So I called and said, okay, where can we get this taken care of? He indicated that he would have the money for me on Friday.
Would that be Friday, August 21st, 1987?
Yes.
Was there some disagreement or compromise or negotiation between you and the defendant about how much you would ultimately be paid?
Yes.
What did you settle on?
We finally settled on $60.
Where was the payment to be made?
Eugene was going to bring the money to my house.
Were you home that night?
Yes, I was.
Did he make it to your house?
No, he did not.
Did you have occasion to call him or try to reach him by phone and ask him where he was that night?
Yes, I did.
And in your initial call to him, he was at his residence, is that correct?
Yes.
Was he home?
No, he was not.
Did he return your call?
Yes, he did.
And was some arrangement made for you to get together with the defendant?
Yes.
How was that done?
Initially, we set up a time later. I think it was the following Wednesday when he said he would have the money for me. And then I would go over and pick it up.
And did you go to his house that Wednesday evening?
Yes, I did.
Let's move back to that phone
Okay.
conversation a moment. When he returned the call to you, was it an evening hours?
Yes, it was.
You were completely awake and alert at the time he called you?
I believe so.
As an English teacher, you're very sensitive to other people's use of language
I think so.
and to their communication skills.
I believe so.
And you must be a good listener as a teacher.
Yes.
Please say what the defendant said to you about not meeting with you Friday night with the money.
He said that he had come over to deliver the money, but was not able to find the house. And at that point, he went on down to Boland's, which is down on 12th, where Shane, his brother, was, and talked to him. So after that, he just kind of messed around and did some other stuff.
Did you ever get your $60?
Yes, I did.
How did that come about?
The following Wednesday, I went over to his house in the evening, and he did pay me.
And when you got your money, did you have a conversation with him?
Yes, I did.
Where did this conversation take place?
In his yard,
Were you sitting or standing?
staying.
Was it evening or afternoon or daylight hours?
with this.
Spoke to him, was he looking at you?
Yes.
When he spoke, were there any noise or distractions, keeping you from hearing the words he was saying?
No.
As best as you can recall, please tell the jury what the defendant said to you at that time.
Eugene had indicated that he had been painting the upstairs, that he felt rather pressured because the rent was going up and he'd possibly have to find a place to move, and also that he felt that there were lots of things messing with his mind.
And that would have been on August 26th, 1987. No further questions.
Mr. Collins gave you a $10 check, is that correct, sir, and $50 in cash?
That's true.
And you signed the check, negotiated,
Yes.
and it was good.
Yes.
I hand you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit B, Mr. Collins, for identification purposes, tell us the truth.
This is a check from Eugene made out to me for $10.
And what's the date?
26th of August.
And have you endorsed it?
Yes, sir.
Cash it?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I move the admission of the
No objection,
Collins, Eugene indicated that he'd been painting the upstairs house.
Yes.
He indicated to you that he'd been paying rent at home, the rent was going up,
Yes, he did.
and that was putting him under suppression.
Yes.
You were paid directly by Pioneer, your understanding?
Yes, for most of the work.
This was Goldman's County, is that correct?
The hours were kept separately. There were the supervisory hours. There were also additional hours that Eugene was keeping for the Saturday that we picked up the bus and went out to check out the fields. There was the time for returning the bus to Henry after we were through. And then there was also the travel time. The workers' hours ended when we left the field, but my time as bus driver continued until we returned home.
Then, how old is that?
How old am I?
Yeah.
44.
You know how old Eugene,
I believe he was around 22.
Just one question. I don't think it came out until cross-examination. Where was the defendant paying rent?
He indicated at home.
Okay. I brought on cross-examination, I didn't say that on direct. He was paying rent at home. Okay. Step down. Order next to the shore. Donna Boland, please.
He was or is in the courtroom. There you are. Get the door through there. Raise your right hand.
Will you state your name, please?
Donna Bowen,
And where do you live?
905 South 12th Union Street.
And are you employed outside your home? And you know the defendant in this case?
Yes,
In fact, you can get special permission, I think, to stay in the court even though you're a witness,
Yes,
so that
I
you
have.
can kind of talk between the family and the defendant how to do. That's very much appreciated. You heard the testimony of the prior witness, Mr. Gary Collins,
yes,
in which he testified that the defendant had informed him that he had been at your house on the evening of August 21st,
I did not see him.
Were you home all day?
I was home in the evening because we had a Red Cross meeting.
And at the conclusion of that Red Cross meeting, you remained at home that night?
Yes,
And you know what the guy looks like?
yes,
You know, the course motor to your left?
yes,
And he had been to your house 4 or 5 times in the course that you've known.
yes,
Always used the front door.
yes,
And either knock or ring the doorbell.
yes.
Did you ring or use the doorbell that night?
I didn't hear anything.
I appreciate the testimony. Thank you. No further questions.
Oh, one, you have a daughter, Linnell. And Shane, you know Shane?
Yes, I do.
That's Gene Anderson's brother, is that right?
Right.
He lives at your house?
He's there frequently.
Back on August of 1987, was he there frequently, particularly at the time that we just talked about?
Yes,
He worked that night until 9 o'clock, is that right?
I believe so.
Your daughter was there, Linnell?
Yes,
Did they go out that evening? You know?
he did.
They run into this young man during that evening? Do you know?
Excuse me, Your Honor.
If you know.
Excuse me, Your Honor. I believe that the state because of that case in orderly fashion. Now, he's offering hearsay and beyond the scope of the direct examination by far, plus it's hearsay. I intend to call Mrs. Boland myself and have every opportunity to question her herself rather than expect from the mom what her testimony will be.
They run into this young man during that evening, do you know? If you know.
Question calls for hearsay clearly, Your Honor.
Sustained.
On the 24th, Monday night, 24th of August, Gene at your home?
Yes, he was.
You watched the Red movie? On August the 26th, Wednesday night, was he at your home?
I do not recall.
You recollect whether or not his mother's pie plate was brought back? Do you recollect that?
Excuse me, Your Honor. I questioned this witness on one day, and I'm entitled to put my case on an orderly fashion. This is 5 days beyond the scope of the direct examination.
Your Honor, you know, I can bring her back and ask her these very questions.
I think he should, Your Honor. I think he should put his own case on at the time.
I'm just tempted to say full time, but I'll be glad to bring it back.
All right, we'll follow.
Fact is, you did not see Eugene on 21st.
I did not see him.
Okay.
Where did you direct?
No further questions, Your Honor.
They stepped down. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, remember the adjudication was given to you.